Hello.
Hello, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to you all. How are you doing?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
They're doing well. What's about you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm also fine. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us in this today's session, especially at this hour of morning. Now, today we'll be discussing about the cognitive process of translation. As you can see on the screen, the title, the cognitive process of translation. I believe that you understand what is cognitive, right? Because in the psycholinguistics, we're also dealing with cognitive, the cognitive, you could say the development of the language. Remember that? The cognitivists, those who depend on the psychological development. That means it depends on the brain. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you can understand it from that, the same term. So here also we'll see that how actually it's a mental process or it's a cognitive process of translation. So we'll be looking at that today also. All right. So let me move on to the next slide. Now, I hope you can see it. I'll be reading it to you, then I'll explain it to you uh, so that you can understand it easily. Now, translation shift analysis seeks to describe the phenomenon of translation by analyzing and classifying the changes that can be observed by comparing source text and target text pairs. As you can remember that we talked about in one of our lectures about the translation shift. So here actually says that shift, it's a phenomenon. That means uh, where actually we try to analyze the translation, and also we try to classify different kinds of changes, and these changes are observable. How actually you can observe these changes? By comparing the source text and the target text pairs. So you will compare the source text and the target text, and then you will try to find out the shift where actually the translation actually it has you can see experience a kind of shift. Now, it is a means of describing what constitutes the translation product, but there are limits about what it can, or even attempts to tell us about the actual process of translation. So, it is a means of describing what constitutes the translation product. So, through this kind of translation shift analysis, we try to find out the different kinds. I mean, what are the things that constitutes the translation product? Translation is a product, and what actually, how actually or what are the things that have contributed in the making of translation. But there are limits. When you try to understand translation work by analyzing these translation shift, so there are limits about what it can or even attempts to tell us about the actual process of translation. So the actual process of translation cannot be known through translation shift analysis. So what we can do, there are different other models that we can choose, and also we can go for different approach based on the observation, analysis, and or explanation of the cognitive processes of the translators themselves. So how the translators, so if you are a translator, so some cognitive process, something going on in your brain, in your mind. So the translators, analyzing these translators' cognitive process, we can go for the explanation about the translation. That what is translation? How does it work? How actually it functions? So we can find it out through analyzing this cognitive process of the translators. Now it's a book from Roger Bell. As you can see, it was published in 1991 from page 43. It says that he puts it in this way, this cognitive process. He says that focus on the description of the process and or the translator from the twin issues which translation theory must address: how the process takes place and what knowledge and skills the translator must process in order to carry it out. So these are the two things that we have to focus on. First of all, from the twin issues. So the process of the translator, remember, this is nobody else's, process. The process of the translator, how actually it is working in his brain. So that process we have to think, but there are twin issues. That means there are two issues which translation theory must address. The first issue or first important thing is that how the process takes place. First of all, the translation theory, if you really want to understand the cognitive process, you have to try to find out the answer to this question. That is how the process takes place. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing that we need to, or second issue that we need to focus on, that is what knowledge and skills the translator must process in order to carry it out. So first is process, that is how it takes place. So we need to figure it out. And then what knowledge and skills the translator must process in order to carry it out. So there is a process there, that how it takes place, and the knowledge and the skills that the translator will use to carry out that process. Okay, that means if the translator, if he or she wants to execute, I mean, his job as a translator, that means carry it out, then he must have some knowledge and skills. So those knowledge and skills are focus point, that how it works, or how do they work, and the process that takes place when, I mean, with the translator. So these two things, if we focus on, then according to Roger Bell, then we can find out these cognitive process. Now, that's the interpretive model of translation, and it was championed. That means it was very much popular at that time, or introduced at that time in Paris, and you can see the date from 1960s onwards by Danica and Marinet. So these are two academicians, and initially applied to the study of conference interpreting. So they actually applied this technique, that is how the process takes place and what knowledge and skills the translator must process in order to carry it out. So these two issues, when they took these two issues, I mean, for the explanation of the translation process, then that is called interpretive model. And this interpretive model, it was used in 1960s by these two academicians. And initially, actually, they used this model, this interpretive model of translation. They used it for the study to the study of conference interpreting. You know, there are different kinds of conferences are happening all around the world. So they're actually how actually they are interpreting different people from different, you can say, language or linguistic background. So this conference interpreting is for this purpose, actually, this interpretive model of translation, it has been used there. Then it explains translation as an overlapping three-stage process. And these three-stage process involves, so what are those three-stage process? This is the most important thing, the interpretive model. And there we have three-stage process. So let's see what are those three-stage process, and what do they involve. Now, since we have already come to know about a little bit about this, I mean, cognitive process, and also we have seen one definition by Roger Bell, and also have come to know about the interpretive model of translation. Now we will see that how this interpretive model of translation, how it works in three different stages, and and what are the things actually do they involve there. The first thing that is, you can see that reading and understanding. Okay, the first stage of interpretive model of translation is reading and understanding. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes,
reading and understanding. Okay. Now, how actually we'll do this reading and understanding? So we'll read and then we'll understand. So you see, it's a mental process. It's a cognitive process, right? Because we read and we understand, we have to use the brain to understand it. Because from the psycholinguistics, we have already come to know that how language and brain, they're interconnected, interdependent. That means without brain, simply language can't work. We have already seen it, and it's scientifically proven. So similarly, if you take that idea from there, then you can see reading and understanding using linguistic competence and world knowledge. So how can we do this? We can do this by doing this using linguistic competence and world knowledge to grasp the sense of the source text. So if you really want to read and understand the work, the source text, to grasp the sense, the meaning of the source text, then you have to use linguistic competence. That means the capacity or the proficiency of using the language, both the language. The first, I mean, your mother tongue or the source text language, and also the target text language. So both the languages actually have to know the word. So you must have a good command over those two languages. So That is linguistic competence. That means you understand it, you can use it, you can write it, read it, and you know the grammatical, syntactic, semantic, all these functions are also the pragmatic point of view. Also, you can understand it. So when you have all these things together, then we call it linguistic competence. And as well as you must have world knowledge. That means that according to psycholinguistics, what we call a schema, that is already existing knowledge. So in your brain, you have already stored many information about many different kinds of things since your birth. So all these information together, we'll call it world knowledge. That means you have ideas or you have knowledge about the whole world, about the world, about your surroundings, that we should say. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So when you have knowledge of these two things, then you will be able to read and understand the meaning of the source text. Now, the linguistic component needs to be understood by reference not only to explicit but also to implicit meaning in an attempt to recover the authorial intention. So, you see, the linguistic component needs to be understood by reference not only to explicit but also to implicit meaning. So, you see, when actually we talk about linguistic component, that means your linguistic competence. So, it will help you to understand. I mean, the explicit and the implicit meaning. Understood? And what are those meanings? And why do you find those meanings in the authorial intention to recover the authorial intention? For example, I'm the author. I wrote a text in Bangla, and you are a translator. Now you want to translate it from Bangla to English. So when I wrote the text, maybe a novel or a poem, for example, I wrote a poem, and you want to translate that from Bangla to English. So you need to understand my intention because I'm the author, original author. You're just the translator. You're not the author, but you're the translator. So you need to know my intention, what was going on in my mind, and what actually really I meant through this text, through this poem. Understood? So,
Yes,
both,
sir.
and when you read a poem or a novel or any kind of literary works from any genre, we have we have already experienced this, okay, in our academia. That is, when you read a text, especially from any literary pieces, that when you read it, then explicit, that means surface level, you will get a meaning. And beneath that surface level meaning, there are something else, especially in poetry, we can see it. So we can see both explicit and the implicit meaning. One is visible, another one is that is not visible, that is invisible. So explicit is the visible meaning or visible intention of the author, and implicit is the you can say the invisible meaning of the author, so which is hidden, and we have to recover it. We have to delve into the text, and then we have to find out the meaning out of it. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the world knowledge we have, according to Latimer, is deverbalized, theoretical, general, encyclopedic, and cultural, and activated differently in different translators and by different texts. Now, here we have already come to know about the linguistic competence. So it's been explained there that how actually it helps us to understand the author's intention, both the explicit and the implicit meaning of the text. And now we have come to this point that the world knowledge that already we have mentioned that, and how this world knowledge actually it is stored, or how does it function now here, or how actually it is activated. So here it says that this world knowledge that is deverbalized, and that is theoretical, general, and encyclopedic and cultural. You understand? I hope. Do you understand it? And this world knowledge is activated in a different way in different translators. For example, if I'm a translator, so I'm a different person. So this world knowledge will be activated in me, within my brain, in a different. Since my socio-cultural background is different, my education background is different, my family background is different, and also geographical. Actually, I'm from a different parts of the country, and because of all these things, there are some, I mean, you can find some differences in my attitude, in my behavior, in my vocabulary, the way I talk, the way I behave, because I'm from a different parts of the country and I have a different kinds of background. Understood? So this wall knowledge that I have in my brain, that will be activated in a different way. Isn't it natural?
Yes, sir.
Same thing goes for you. You are a different person, and this wall knowledge that you have in your brain, that will be activated in a different way. Okay. Now, I can give you a very practical example so that you'll find it easy to understand. That is, for example, since all of you are from the northern part of Bangladesh, so wherever actually you come across any issues or any kind of stuff from the which is completely related with the northern part of Bangladesh. So if you find it easy to understand, but since I'm not from here, so I'm not completely oriented with the culture, the tradition, even your food habit, all these things. With all these things, I'm not completely oriented with this stuff. So the way the world knowledge about the northern part of Bangladesh that will be activated in you as a translator will not be activated in me in the same fashion. Have you got it? What I've said?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, let me make it more specific, more solid. For example, uh, you have a text and it is written in the, uh, for example, Rangpurian dialect or the dialect that is used in Bogor. Is there anyone from Bogor? Yeah. Okay, you're from Nilphamari, Dinaspur, and mostly from Rangpur. So, for example, it's from Nilphamari, Dinaspur. From here, there is a text and that is written in the local dialect. Now, if you give me to translate that text, and if you are given that the same text, so I will find that your performance will be better than me. Don't you think so?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Because we are oriented our local dialect
That
already.
means you know the local dialect. Since I'm not from here, so I don't know it. So I will struggle to translate it because some of the expressions even I will not understand. I have to ask you, that actually, what do they mean? Right? Isn't it?
Right, sir.
So you see, your world knowledge that will be activated in a different way. And you see, our world knowledge is deverbalized. That means it is expressed in words, and also sometimes they are, theoretically it is stored there. Some of the world knowledge they are very general, and some world knowledge they're encyclopedic. That means they're huge. Okay, and that is you can say. I mean, you know a lot about lots of things. So it says that encyclopedia. And some of the world knowledge they're very much cultural. That already I have mentioned. That means culture to culture, it varies. So as a translator, also my world knowledge will be activated in a different way. Okay. Now here you see in different that activated differently in different translators and by different texts. Now here we have the direct quote from the letter. He said that translators are privileged. Translators are privileged readers called on to understand the facts in a text and to feel its emotional connotations. That is why translators do not feel equally close to all texts. You see, translators are privileged readers called on to understand the facts in a text. You see, why actually we are calling them that they're privileged? Because they have the capacity, they have this competence to understand the facts in a text. So that's why they're privileged. Because since they know both the languages, so they can understand what is going on in the text. They can understand the intention of the author. They can, you can say, recover the meaning, both explicit and implicit. So that's why they're privileged. Understood? That means they're in a good position. That's why you're saying that they're privileged. They're privileged readers. For example, if I read a text which has been translated from French to English, but I can't read French language, so I'm not a French language speaker. So uh, I will read it in translation, but the original text actually I didn't have that opportunity since I don't know the language. So that's why I'm reading the translation, not the original text. But the translator actually he had the privileges to read the text both in French and then he translated it into English. So now he can read it in English and also he can read it. Obviously, he could read it in French. Understood what I'm saying? So
Yes,
the
sir.
translators are privileged because they can read the text in both the languages. Okay, and to feel its emotional connotations, obviously, and which is it's really obvious that he will also understand the emotional connotations, that the meaning that we're talking about, connotations. That means that is not a denotative meaning. I mean the meaning beyond it, and also the emotional connotations. That means the emotional meaning, or you can see the emotional facts that we have in the text. So he can also understand it. And that is why translators do not feel equally close to all texts. Now, this is interesting that a translator or the translators, they will not feel equally close to all texts because they know both the languages. And that's why they have the privilege to understand both the explicit and the implicit meaning and also the emotional connotations. So since they're trained, or maybe they have that competence to understand the emotional connotations and explicit or implicit meaning, whatever you say. So they do not feel equally close to all texts. So some of the texts, since they know both the languages, so they will feel more close to the language. And some of the texts, they don't feel anything, or they don't feel that much close to the text because they understand the meaning very well, not like the general readers. Okay. Now, so first, reading and understanding using linguistic competence and world knowledge to grasp the meaning. Now we have deverbalization. Okay, sorry. Fine. Hello. Fine. Okay. Could you please help me? Please read the first paragraph. Read it, please. Read it for me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well,
So, so
deverbalization.
deverbalization
Mhm.
um, is an essential intermediate phase if the translator is to avoid transcoding and calculus
Calcs.
calcs
Okay, okay, okay,
and
okay.
split.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, deverbalization is an essential intermediate phase if the translator is to avoid transcoding and calcs. So you see the essential intermediate phase. Essential intermediate phase, that is, a translator will go different kinds of phases. An intermediate means actually while he is translating. And at that time of translation, or when he is in the middle of the translation, in that phase, then he will try to avoid transcoding and calcs. You remember what is calc? Calc is a kind of loan translation. That means,
It is for borrowing an
yes,
expression.
it's borrowing an expression. Exactly. Thank you. So it's a kind of borrowing an expression from different other languages. And it can be semantic, it can be based on phrase, it can be syntactic. Okay, in different ways actually we can experience calc. Now, I can give you an example of calc, like for example, the devil's advocate. So it's a phrase, and this expression actually it has been borrowed from the Latin phrase advocatus diaboli. Okay, so this advocatus diaboli, it means devil's advocate. So we have borrowed this expression directly from the Latin. So that is cult. And borrowing is just borrowing a word or a concept sometimes, but mostly it's written with word. But cult is in the, you can say it's a more elaborate, you can say, that is the expression, sentence, all these things borrowing from different other language, that we call cult. Also, it's another name is loan translation. Okay. Now, here you see an explanation developed to explain the cognitive process of the interpreter where transfer is supposedly through sense and not words. So deverbalization is claimed to be less obvious in translation, but is still present. So this is an interesting phase where in the deverbalization phase, actually, you are not going for borrowing, or you're not going for calcs, or transcoding means that is to take the code from another language and then you transmit it or transfer it to the another language, code language. Actually, it's not like that, or that means it's not like direct translation. So it's more than that, and it is less obvious in translation. So in translation, you can't feel deverbalization, but still it's there. It's present in the translation. Understood? Since we are not directly copying, that means we are taking the sense from the source text. Okay, so that's why it is less obvious in translation, but is still present in the translation. So that is the idea of deverbalization. It's an essential intermediate phase, and when actually we try to deverbalize, we try to avoid transcoding and cuts. We try to make it sense for sense, not word for word or direct translation. And then the third one is re-expression, where the target text is constituted and given form, given form based on the deverbalized understanding of sense. I told you, deverbalized understanding of sense. So where the target text is constituted, re-expression, and given form based on. So it will give the form, that means we'll use the form in the both, that is the target text and also the source text. So the form, we'll try to find the equivalence, and at the same time, we'll try to express what actually we have got from the deverbalized process. That means understanding the sense. So we'll try to re-express it in the target text, that means the target language, in the TL. So deverbalization, you can see it's a kind of, the second phase of the translation, and then comes the re-expression. So you take the source text and take the ideas from there, the sense, you deverbalize it, and then you translate it. Okay, so that is a re-expression. Understood? It's a stage by stage. Dear students, have you got
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So re-expression, that is actually, you can say, when you try to express it and you will start translating, you will start writing, that's re-expression. And there is another stage, the fourth stage, that is called verification. Verification. I'm sorry, that is a typo. So the fourth stage is verification. Verification. There is one FI extra. Okay, so forget it. Verification, where the translator revisits and evaluates the target text. So re-expression is the writing of the text. That means you are translated from the source text to the target text. That is the re-expression. And in the verification, we will try to go back to our task, our text, go back to our target text. That means my translation work. Then I will revisit and reevaluate that whether it's okay or not. Then I will try to compare with the original text. Then I'll finalize the work. Understood? That is the verification. So you will judge, or you will think, you will reconsider your text, that whether it is okay or not. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So in a sense, verification, you can say that is when actually we try to correct the whole, or edit our whole work. Now, from the perspective of relevance theory, the important work of Hans August put this translation as an example of a communication based around a cause and effect model of inferencing and interpretation. So remember, there is another theory that is called relevance theory, and from there, actually, it is said that actually it deals with the cause and effect model. Cause means there will be a cause and there will be an effect of it. So something happens because there is a reason. So that is cause and effect model. And cause and effect model of inferencing. Inferencing means when you make some assumption, you try to guess, and then you try to interpret. Understood? So the cause and effect model of assuming or guessing or inferencing and interpreting. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now, here it goes further that any successful communication is said to depend on the communicators ensuring that his or her informative intention is grasped by the receiver, and this is achieved by making the stimulus, that is words, gestures, etc., optimally relevant to the extent that the receiver can expect to derive adequate contextual effects without spending unnecessary effort. I'll make it very simple for you. Don't get nervous, okay? Can you say that? So all of us, we are a communicator, right? You are a communicator. I'm a communicator because I'm communicating my ideas to you. Got it?
Right, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, what am I communicating? I'm communicating information, right?
Right, sir.
And in my information, there is my intention, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, sir.
It's not only information, it also what I mean, isn't it? So that's why it is called together informative intention. Is it clear now? Information plus intention.
Yes,
As
sir.
a communicator, I'll give you some information, but I have an intention to give you that information. Okay? So, and these informative intention that will be grasped or that will be comprehended, understood by the receiver. This is the sole purpose of communication, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So that
Yes,
is
sir.
the prime focus of our communication is that we will try to ensure this informative intention and it will be grasped by the receiver. Now, if I inform you in such a way that you find the information very difficult, therefore you fail to understand my intention, then will you call the communication a successful one?
No, sir.
Great. Then how it is proved successful, or how can we achieve that success? By making the stimulus. That means I will use the words and gestures, my postures, that is my vocabulary, everything, syntax, or also my semantic competence, all these things I will use in such a way that as a receiver, for example, now I am trying to communicate some ideas about translation studies, especially the cognitive process of translation. That is the topic of, our today's topic of discussion. And you are the receiver. And I'm trying to communicate it in such a way that I'm trying to use easy thing gestures, since we are having online sessions, so gestures is not important there, but also my intonation, my pitch, my vocal cord vibration, everything is making sense to you, right?
Right, sir.
Right, sir.
That's how you can understand. So this is the stimulus. That means if you then don't get the stimulus, if you don't get anything, I'm saying lots of things, but you don't understand an iota out of it, then it's a failed communication. But when it is successful, that is a stimulus. That means I'm giving you some reason or some impetus so that you can understand whatever actually I'm talking about. So you will be able to grasp the informative intention. So similar thing we have to do in the translation. I'm the translator, you are the receiver, and I'm trying to communicate the informative intention of the original author from another language. Isn't it the whole process of translation?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Fantastic. So, and if I fail to do that, then what will happen? As a receiver, you will try to use the whole context, your surroundings, phenomena, and different other stuff to try to relate with those things, and you'll try to understand the meaning, the intention. And sometimes those are unnecessary effort in that sense that still you fail to understand. So then we call it unnecessary effort because it says that the receiver can expect to derive optimally relevant to the extent that the receiver can expect to derive adequate contextual effects without spending unnecessary effort. So he will not give more unnecessary effort to understand it. So from the context, because of the stimulus, that means my words and gestures, postures, my voice projection, from everything. So just using the context, you are the receiver and you will be able to understand it very easily. Then the communication is successful. So that is the communicator gives the hearer, that means the listener, communicative clues that allow the inference to be made. So when I'll be able to give you this informative intention or establish this informative intention, then and you'll be able to grasp it or comprehend it. So it's by using what? That you see the communicative clues that allow the inference to be made. So in the successful communication, you will get the communicative clues, that is different hints to understand our communication, and then you can make some inference. For example, uh, maybe someone was very sick, and all of us we know him. He is our common friend. Okay,
Okay, sir.
right now. So I know something about him. Maybe he has been taken to the hospital. Maybe he has got very sick very recently. So if I say that that X last night actually he was experiencing something bad things and he got fainted and then he was taken to the hospital. Then from these information, these words and gestures, you can understand that I'm saying that maybe he had been taken to the hospital last night, right?
Right, sir.
So this is the inference or guess that you have made from my communicative clues, because I have given you some clues that last night he got very sick, he felt very tired, exhausted, he couldn't breathe. Then definitely you'll ask, was he taken to the hospital? Because he could infer it. Then I'll say, yes, he was taken to the hospital. So if you have time, let's go, we'll visit him, and then that will, I mean, that, what should I say? That will actually give him some good feelings. He will feel revitalized seeing his friends. So let's go and see him in the hospital. So you see, we'll make some inference from these communicative clues. In the translation, we have to use the same technique. So translators, for their part, are faced with a similar situation and have several responsibilities. They need to decide whether and how it is possible to communicate the informative intention, whether to translate descriptively or interpretively, what the degree of resemblance to the source text should be, and so on. These decisions are based on the translator's evaluation of the cognitive environment of the receiver. So, when you think about these informative intention, then you have to decide that whether actually we're going to translate the text descriptively, that means you will describe everything, or interpretively, that is based on analysis, or you will try to fix the resemblance, that means equivalence of the source text and how it should be, and different other stuff that you'll try to establish. And you have to take these decisions. How? Based on the translator's evaluation of the cognitive environment of the receiver. So what is the cognitive environment? The receiver. That means I'm translating a text from English to Bengali, thinking about you. So I have to think about your cognitive environment, that how actually will you take it? Okay. So if I try to translate a book uh, from engineering faculty or the science department, the science faculty, then if I want to make it translate it for the academician, then my informative intention will be different. My information will be different. If I try to make it simple for the general audience so that they can understand the scientific terms and terminologies or stuff or ideas or concept, so then I have to make it very easy so that they can understand it, because not all of us from the science background. So my cognitive, you can say the environment, or you can say my ability as a receiver, you have to consider it. That for whom actually you are going to translate the work. You have to think about your readership, your readers. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we don't have enough time, so I'd like to conclude our today's discussion here. So, but before that, before we conclude our today's session, if you have any question, do you have any question or any opinion? Anything else? No?
Sir, please upload our previous lecture as early as possible.
Okay, okay. I'll do that in time.
Okay, sir.
Talk to me about today's lecture. Do you have any question?
No, sir.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, and we'll meet again in our next lecture, inshallah. Take care of yourself and have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.